Welcome back to another exciting episode of Adventuring for Mere Mortals. I'm Kyle, joined by co-host Trevor, and today we're chatting with Marybeth and Brently from Bikes, Buses, and Beers. Trev, since you extended the invitation, how about you do introductions?
Marybeth and Brently from BBB Adventures. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So I just mentioned y'all have a YouTube channel, BBB Adventures, and we'll get into a lot of what you guys have been up to. But the big thing that kind of drew me to calling you guys up or Instagram message you, if I'm being honest, is you just finished a bike touring trip across the U.S. from Washington to New York called the Apollo Mission. So Really cool. We'll get into all the details, but first, just tell us a bit about yourselves.
Okay, well, I'll start. My name's Brently, like I think you said, and I'm an Idaho resident. So I was born in Idaho. We live in Idaho now, but we just recently moved back. So I spent a lot of my adulthood life not in Idaho, but I grew up in Idaho, went to the University of Idaho, and got a degree in mechanical engineering, and started my career and spent my entire career in the high-tech computer industry, which provided me an opportunity to be an expat and live in India and Taiwan. In fact, Marybeth and I lived in Taiwan together for 6 years. We've been back in the U.S. for 2 years now, but we lived in Taiwan together in 6 years. And that's really where we developed, I would say, cemented our love for cycling, because we're living in Taiwan, because it's really some world-class cycling. And if folks are interested, you can go to BB Adventures, and if you go back into the archives of videos, we've got lots of videos of cycling in Taiwan and what that's like. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. For me, this is a podcast about adventures and getting out and doing stuff. And growing up in Idaho included a lot of outdoor activities. I mean, hunting, fishing, hiking, backpacking, skiing in the winter. That was just the way life was. I didn't really think much about it. That was just life. And when I look back on it now, it was a pretty magical place to grow up with all of this outdoor stuff. And I probably didn't appreciate it. Well, in fact, I know I didn't appreciate it as much as, I should have. Sort of just took it for granted. I even climbed when I was 15 years old, I climbed to the top of the Grand Teton. Now when we go to the Tetons and I look at it, I'm like, I can't believe I actually climbed up there. And when I look at photos, I got photographs. I took my dad loaned me his, this was in the 80s, in the early 80s. And, before digital photography, my dad loaned me his really expensive, 35 millimeter camera. And I have a picture of me sitting on the summit, and I'm wearing a University of Idaho sweatshirt, and I'm wearing 501 jeans, and I've got, some low dollar hiking boots on. I mean, it's today you got to spend, $4,000 on mountain climbing equipment if you're going to go do something like that. It's so I had an early introduction to outdoor stuff, and I really enjoy it. I really love it. And we'll get into some more history with our cycling here in a minute, but I'll give Marybeth a chance to talk.
So I was born and raised in Madison, Wisconsin. I spent most of my adult life in the Chicagoland area until this guy drugged me to Taiwan, and then here to Idaho. So I did not live an outdoorsy life at all. I went skiing twice in Wisconsin. And if that's considered skiing, I know people. I was going to
say the jury's out on that one.
Yeah, when you have to manufacture the snow, it doesn't count.
Yeah,
is that the rule?
Yeah, I don't know. I just made that up. I don't know.
I started riding a bike in 2012, primarily as a way to get fit and lose weight. But I fell in love with it then. I did my first organized bike ride locally in Illinois and absolutely fell in love with that. I'm like, wow, where has this been my whole life? Was actually my reaction. I remember I was 47. I'm like, why did it take me 47 years to figure this out?
Well, at least you figured it out.
At least I figured it out. And then I did my first RAGBRAI in 2013, and that had me hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, it's interesting because we both got sort of serious into cycling in our 40s. I mean, everybody learned to ride a bike when they were a kid, and a bicycle was part of their adolescence at some level. It was, for me, it was the first sort of expression of freedom. It was the first real freedom you had. You get on a bike, and even today, sometimes when I get on my bike and I'm riding, I get this euphoric feeling. It's like, oh, I'm 5 years or whatever, 8 years old again. Riding my bike. It just makes me happy. But yeah, that's like I said, when we moved to Taiwan, the first thing we did when we landed, literally within the first few days of being there, we went to the Giant store and ordered 2 brand new road bikes, and we rode them.
15,000 miles.
Yeah, we logged about, according to Strava, we logged about 15,000 miles in the 6 years we were there.
Wow.
And we did lots of riding, and it really, just like I said, cemented our love of cycling, and it's what led us to bike touring. And we can probably get into that later, but yeah, that's and then we started BBB Adventures when we lived in Taiwan, because we were like, nobody knows how great this island is in terms of cycling. It's not usually listed on like the top 10 places in the world to go cycling, and it should be. And so we wanted to share that experience with friends and family, and so that's why we started it. And then and at the time it was actually called Buses, Bikes, and Beers. That's what BBB stands for. We rebranded it recently to comply with some stuff. YouTube rules. Apparently YouTube thought we were promoting alcohol in vehicles because of our title. So, but we started it to share, and then it turned, for us, it sort of pivoted and turned into something that, as we started to build a community and started to engage with our viewers, it became clear that it was a vehicle by which we could inspire others. And if you look at the demographics of our channel, it's not 20-year-olds. It's people from their 40s till their 60s is our key demographic. And we're inspiring people because they tell us. It's, we have viewers that tell us. We have a lot of people on RAGBRAI last year that told us, hey, we're on RAGBRAI because of you guys. And so that really, really motivates us, that we're getting people out and enjoying the magic of cycling. So that's why we do it.
Your channel's the reason I know about RAGBRAI. The YouTube algorithm just popped it up, and I don't even know, it was a couple of years ago. And yeah, I watched all of the videos from, I guess that was 3 years ago. Yeah, I think then. Yeah. But yeah, I learned all about it. I was like, okay, we gotta do this. And now I've tried to rope in a lot of my friends to go next year, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I think that's a great introduction to y'all. Let's do a bit of a catch up, because Kyle and I, we are buddies, but we don't talk as much as we should. But Kyle, what have you been up to?
Not a whole lot of adventuring. Let's see. I took the front end of my truck apart, the entire suspension, and then put it back together with new components. So that was fun.
Is it a rock crawler?
No, it is not. It was just it had the ball joints all needed to be replaced, and I had a leaky shock. And the way my truck is set up, in order to replace the shock, I have to take the whole front end basically apart. So it's like, well, if I'm going to take it apart, I might as well put new components back in, so that way I don't have to worry about it for another 120-something thousand miles. So I did that, and then I decided I've got the storage a drawer system in the back of my truck for camping and stuff. And I use that when going skiing in the winter and stuff like that. It's had a hard life, so I'm building a new one.
It's very industrious.
Yeah. Yeah. I go through waves, it turns out. But I'm about over it. So once this is done, then I'm done for a while. Been busy with work-related stuff. What about you, Trev?
I guess the biggest news is I will now be employed for the foreseeable future. So I've kind of alluded to it that when my family and I moved up here to Bloomington, my work wasn't a real big fan of me being remote, and I requested remote, and they all kind of said no. So I kept getting extended for business reasons, and then I was able to post for a new role. So instead of doing regular office work, I'm going to be doing 14 days on, 14 days off out the field. So it's going to be an adjustment, and my wife and I are going to give it a shot, and my mother-in-law is going to have to come help us. So when I'm not there, because my wife works full time and she works longer hours than I do. So we're working it out, but the pay's still good. So I'm going to keep doing that until I decide I don't like it anymore. But on a more fun note, so we live only a couple hours from Chicago. So some of our friends from Louisiana were up in town for the husband's conference he was at, and the whole family came up. So their kids are friends with our kids. So we did Chicago downtown things, went to the planetarium, Shed Aquarium, the field, Navy Pier. Like, I had been to all those things because I lived in Chicago for like 7-8 years in grad school, but it was good to show my kids. I was very excited that my daughter, who's now 6, loved the Field Museum. Like I had to, like, it was closing. I was having to pull her out. It's like, we got to go. She's like, no, I want to look at the dinosaurs. I'm like, okay, we'll come back. I promise, we're only 2 hours away. But yeah, had a good time, and took the Amtrak up, which is a good time. That way you don't have to park and pay for parking and deal with Chicago traffic. It was great. But other than that, working on planning some fall trips. I think here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go down and see our buddy Alex in Kentucky and do some gravel riding, I think is the plan right now. Still working out all the details, but I'll talk about that next episode. But Marybeth and Brently, what have y'all been up to?
Well, we since we finished the Apollo mission, we've sort of been laying low a little bit, but we just finished a 3,000-mile road trip in the car, on a bicycle this time, to attend our daughter's wedding in the Chicagoland area. So we drove from Idaho Falls to Gurnee, Illinois, where she lives, and the wedding was actually in Joliet.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It was in the old Union Station in Joliet, which is now a venue for stuff like weddings. So it was really fantastic. What else? Well, we
adopted a doggie.
We got a doggie.
Oh, a week after we got home.
Yeah. He's a fierce 3-pound 1-ounce toy poodle, and
his name is Disco.
His name is Disco Macaw. Disco Macaw is actually it's one of the craft beers in Taiwan that we fell in love with, and we were drinking it one day at their tap room, and we said, hey, this is a great name for a dog. If we ever have a dog, we're going to name it Disco Macaw. So
that was probably 6 years ago.
That was like 6 years ago. So, we named the dog way before we got it. But we've been enjoying, and when I say enjoying, I'm some of that is true, some of it's not. But, it's every 2 hours, make sure he goes outside so, he doesn't have an accident in the house. And, all the stuff that anybody's ever had a little puppy you go through, why are you chewing on everything? But but we've been enjoying that. And what else? A few home improvements and, preparing. We have a separate building from our house where we do lots of projects. And so we're preparing that for our school bus conversion. So we wanted to get the shop ready for that, because that's one of the next big things on our list. And we probably get into that when we get into what's next for BBB Adventures. We can get into that, but we're going to build a school bus and tour around the U.S. and ride our bikes and drink beer.
Nice. It sounds like a great next adventure.
Sounds horrible. Horrible.
And now that I know that Kyle can do, front ends and ball joints and stuff, I'll let him know when we get the bus, it probably needs all of that. So.
I was going to say, he's not that far from me. He's in Boise. So
Right.
Yeah. And I've got friends in Rexburg, so I have to drive through Idaho Falls.
Well, stop by and, bring your ball joint separators.
It's a big hammer.
Yeah.
Well, now I think it's time to get into our main topic, bike touring. So I'll start it out with this question because in our previous conversations before the recording, I screwed it up. I was using the term bikepacking and bike touring interchangeably, which apparently that is not the case. Could you all explain what the difference is?
Yeah, bike touring is, traditionally is a touring bike, and it's on the road. So you got panniers, it's the traditional thing. You see somebody on the road doing a long-term, adventure or ride or whatever. And that's so it's typically a touring bike, which is basically a version of a road bike with typically fatter tires. They got front and rear panniers. And they might do a little bit of gravel, but traditionally they're on a paved surface, and they stay in campgrounds and city parks and hotels. A lot of people do bike touring with a credit card, right? They don't take the tent and that sort of stuff. Bike packing is usually out in the more wilderness areas. It can be single track. It could be stuff like the Continental Divide Trail or the Colorado Trail or some of those types of activities. But a bike packing is really, think of it as backpacking, but instead of carrying a backpack, you put all your stuff on your bike. And the bike's usually got suspension. It's usually got fatter tires, not a fat tire bike, but like mountain bike type tires. And they don't, the bags that you use in your bike are different. They use frame bags and bags that stick off the seat post. They don't usually use panniers like a touring bike. So
to keep the bike streamlined when you're doing single track, you don't usually have as much space on those trails.
Don't want to catch on trees, bushes, what have you.
Right.
Okay.
So
the episode I edited for next week, we ran into some bike packers who were doing the Continental Divide Trail, and you can see drastically how their bike is set up and packed differently than ours are.
So I think those are the main differences. But they're both really fun. We've actually not done too much bike packing.
We've not done any bike packing.
Yeah, that's what I mean by not too much. Zero is not too much. We watch a lot of folks do it. Ryan Van Duzer is one of our favorite people, and we watch him do stuff. And I look over at Marybeth sometimes, and he's on a single track at the edge of some cliff, and she's got her eyes covered because she thinks he's going to go off the cliff. So I don't know if I'd ever get her to do bike packing, but
don't even think about it.
Yeah. No, she's saying no. That's a negative.
I don't think he would enjoy it either. We were going along some roads where there was a sheer drop off without a guardrail down, and he was panicked about it. So he's not a bike packer either. Yeah. Don't let him fool you.
I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid of falling. That's I'm afraid of the ground. Is what I'm afraid of.
The crash.
No, that's a reasonable fear. That's fine. Okay, well that's great. So now that we've covered the logistics of what it is, how we kind of touched on it a little bit, but how did you get into this? Going from just cycling and just out your door, but coming back that day to go to I'll call it the next level.
Well, we started our bike touring in Taiwan, and that was really with a backpack on our back, no panniers. We were on our road bikes. It was all road touring. It was credit card. We stayed in hotels every night. And that gave us a great taste. I learned then my favorite way to ride a bike was from one place to the next. I loved getting to a point and spending the night there. Way better than I like doing a loop tour where you end up back at home. I really loved going from one point to the next. And then we found Ryan Van Duser's channel after that trip, after our first tour around Taiwan, which we didn't film. We didn't have our cameras then.
It was 2015.
Yeah.
It was our first tour around the island.
And in the middle of the summer, mind you, because we had to wait for my daughter to go back to the U.S. During summer break, so we'd have the time off. Anyway, it was hot. And then the second time we did it, same month. I don't know what's wrong with us, but anyway. Then we found Ryan Van Duser's channel and watched he and his girlfriend at the time cycle across the United States, basically a very similar route from us. They did Astoria, Oregon to New York City. And while we watched that series, we looked at each other and said, we have to do this one day.
Yeah.
And he started planning from that second on. He's been planning.
Yeah, it really put us on a road which led us to what eventually became the Apollo mission. But I'm a planner. I'm a researcher and planner. And so I spent many, many hours researching the right bike, the right routes. We had a spreadsheet. One of our preparation videos on BBB Adventures talks about the preparation that we did. And I had a spreadsheet that I pretty much had done the ride on, Google Street View before we ever did it, and I looked at, I would go to Google Earth and I would, zoom in on I think we could camp here. And, it was, I'm a planner. So, I planned for probably 2 years before we really got serious about it. I think RAGBRAI actually was a key part too, because Marybeth did RAGBRAI in 2013 for the first time, which was before we got married and before we moved to Taiwan. I was living in Texas at the time, and it was like she said, she started riding a bike to get fit and lose some weight or whatever. And then she did RAGBRAI, and right after she did RAGBRAI, I went out and bought a road bike. I'm like, I want to do that, and nice. And that led, RAGBRAI is the gateway drug to cycling.
I've heard.
Yeah. And so, I think, I would not downplay the impact RAGBRAI's had on us. And in fact, RAGBRAI is so important to us that we would plan our yearly trips back to the U.S. We came back every summer I would work at my company's headquarters in Texas, and then we would vacation and see families and that sort of stuff. But our entire summer trip was planned around that event, and so we never missed it. Even the year it was canceled in 2020, we were still living in Taiwan. It was canceled because of the pandemic, and they did a virtual RAGBRAI, and we incorporated that as part of our second trip around the island. And so it was virtual RAGBRAI day one, and we were cycling about the same distance and the same feet of climb that you were supposed to do during RAGBRAI. We were very meticulous and logged it all and whatever.
It was fun.
It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were fortunate that we were able to keep a vehicle in Chicago. We have a 1962 Corvair camper van, and we were able to keep that in storage in the Chicagoland area with our road bikes, our RAGBRAI road bikes inside of it. So we'd just fly into Chicago, pick up our vehicle, and drive to the end town and do RAGBRAI that way. We were very lucky.
That's awesome. Well, I think this is a good plot. We should just talk about RAGBRAI, because I've already roped Kyle in and our buddy Stan, and there's a couple more people that I'm working on, but they haven't committed yet. But I think barring any extenuating circumstances, we're gonna be there next year. So we'll definitely have to.
That's awesome.
But yeah, give us the rundown.
RAGBRAI's been amazing, because as I've mentioned to people that, Trev's been talking about this, there's at least 6 people that have done it, and I didn't know. and it's like, oh yeah, you gotta go. We're gonna go back.
Yeah, it's
The 50th,
look, it's the best week of the year.
50th anniversary.
You know, the next year will be the 50th anniversary. It's going to be a great year to go. But, you know, for us, and I think probably anybody that has any inclination to do it, it's the best week of the year. I mean, it's like you live for 7 days in Utopia because there's no cars on the road because the route is planned way ahead of time. And so for every given day, the state police basically block the road off. The only cars you'll see are people who live locally and need to get to their home, or an ambulance, or an emergency vehicle or whatever. So you don't have to worry about cars, and you're on the road, and the RAGBRAI people ride the route several times so they know that the road's in good shape. And so all of the things that you worry about in riding a bicycle are sort of gone, and you're just riding with, 15 to 20,000 of like-minded cyclists, and you just see such a diversity of people and bicycles and equipment and levels of fitness, and you see big people, small people, all ages. There's a guy that's 90. How old?
7.
Clarence, 97. He did his first one when he was 87 or something, like 88
Wow.
years old. And you'll see 8-year-old kids on 10-speed bikes are like, I didn't know they made bikes that small, and families pulling like on a not a tandem bike, but a bike with 3 spots. I don't know what you call that. And then they've got a drag along behind that, and then a trailer with the baby in it or whatever. I mean, it's just, it's everything's. And anybody at any financial level, it's not that expensive. You could just use the RAGBRAI camp, and they'll haul your bags across. It's really inexpensive, all the way up to, like, there are touring companies that will serve a 5-course, 5-star meal to their riders that they're supporting. And every it's just nuts. And you've never seen so many tents in your life. You pull into one of the night towns, and it's like every piece of grass has a tent on it. And I don't know. It's just nobody's ever upset. Nobody's mad. Everybody's happy. Everybody's having the time of their life. And the week goes by so fast. The end day, the final day, the Saturday comes around, and you're like, I can't believe this is over.
Everyone's sad.
Everybody's sad because it's over. You're like, yeah, but you just rode 450 miles. It's like, yeah, but I'm sorry it's over. This was our best year because when it was over, we just kept going.
Nice.
But we got excited, and we just ran in. But I guess for people that aren't aware, RAGBRAI stands for Registers Annual Great Bike Ride Across Iowa. So you start on the west side of Iowa, bike over a week to the east side of Iowa. It's all very organized.
River to the Mississippi
you
River.
dip your rear tire in the Missouri River and your front tire in the Mississippi. And the route's different every year. You go through maybe some of the same towns, but the route's never the same. Sometimes it's in the northern part of the state. Sometimes it's in the middle. Sometimes it's in the southern part. The RAGBRAI people do a great job of planning it and communicating.
Route announcement is typically 6 months before the event begins, which is like the third Saturday in January.
Yeah.
And they usually live stream the route announcement party.
For those of your listeners, again, I'm shamelessly plugging BBB Adventures, but we've got lots of content about RAGBRAI. We've even got a video on how to pack for it, and it's and if anyone out there has a question about it that we might be able to answer, we're happy to interact with folks and do our best to answer questions. We can be contacted on Instagram.
A disclaimer on that packing video, how to pack for RAGBRAI, we always overpack. We pack a lot of stuff. When we're doing just 1 week of RAGBRAI this year, we wore the same thing every day.
We wore the same thing every day for 77 days, but but that's another story.
Well,
But yeah, RAGBRAI. I mean, I couldn't possibly recommend it enough for anybody that has any inclination to. And there's actually a viewer that lives in Idaho Falls, and she again found our channel because of our RAGBRAI content, and she did awesome. And she's not a cyclist, and she does not have an expensive bicycle. And
She's a cyclist now.
Well, she's a cyclist now because she pedaled across Iowa. But there are people doing these on Walmart bikes. I mean, you don't really have to. There really shouldn't be a barrier to doing it if you have interest, really.
Yeah. And from what I understand, you don't have to do the whole thing either. You can do a couple days depending on what your schedule is. So.
You can do one day.
You can
for 7 days.
And if you need to be a registered rider, we don't really like people that just go ride the ride and don't register.
We don't advocate that.
We don't advocate that because it's not an expensive fee and it helps pay for the event and that sort of stuff. But if you are a registered rider and you have a rider wristband, the sag wagon comes by. They've got lots of sag wagons, and you're never more than 30 minutes from a sag wagon. So if you get tired of riding one day, you just jump on the sag wagon. The sag wagon's got a trailer. You put your bike on the trailer, and they'll take you to camp. I mean, it's no big deal, So it's really a great way to dip your toe into long distance cycling.
No, I'm very excited. Like, it had been on my radar for a couple of years since I watched your videos initially, but this year I'm really in because I've been getting more into cycling myself in the last year or so. Now I'm really into it because I can't run as much as I normally can. So it's all cycling all the time now.
You need to, it's not just cycling you got to train for. It's the beer too. You need to train.
I don't have a problem there personally. But yeah, no, that's great. So let's see, where do we want to go? I think a great place to go is onto the Apollo mission, your guys' latest big adventure. So I guess give us the couple sentence summary of like what the goal was, how it went, and then we can really get into all the questions and all the fun stuff.
Well, like Marybeth said, it was inspired by Ryan Van Duzer and the Love Cycles thing that he did on his channel. And for those who haven't checked out Ryan's channel, I couldn't recommend it enough. But that started us down it. We called it the Apollo mission because we rode priority Apollo bikes. And
the goal was to get from Astoria, Oregon to New York City. And just right across the United States. That was the goal.
Yeah, we wanted to be able to ride across the United States, and we picked a route that there's lots of ways you can do that, and it turns out that between 2,000 and 3,000 people do it a year.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I was surprised by that statistic. A lot of them follow the ACA, the Adventure Cycling Association routes. They're very published and there's a lot of data about those routes. There's a lot of information, and it's probably the easiest way to plan one of those. But we wanted to do RAGBRAI as part of it, and so our route had to be very specific. And so we planned our own route. But we rode these fantastic bikes from Priority. In fact, we ended the ride at the Priority headquarters because it's a Manhattan-based company. And so we met those guys, and I'll put a plug in for those guys. If you're not familiar with Priority Bicycles, you can look them up at prioritybicycles.com. But their thing is low/zero maintenance bicycles. So they got Gates carbon fiber belts, no chain. They've got gear, transmissions instead of derailleurs. And we rode these bikes 3,500 miles without doing anything to them. Wow. Zero. No adjustments, no oiling anything, no, my chain jumped off, none of that. Yeah. These were absolutely flawless for the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah.
These are cool looking.
Yeah, they're
I'm shopping. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm telling you, once you have one of these bicycles with, this is like a step function in advancement in bicycle drivetrains. Now, yeah, the purist will come and say, well, yeah, but there's a little bit, there's 2.75% more friction in that transmission than a derailleur. And I'm like, yep, that's probably true. But my cycling capability isn't going to notice a 2.75% or 3% increase in friction.
Yeah.
And I don't have to oil a chain, and I don't get chain grease on my leg, and I don't. It's.
And the Apollos with the transmission in the rear, the Alpine hub in the rear wheel, are super quiet. There's no drivetrain noise, zero. When you're coasting, it's super quiet. The pinion gear up front in the crank, when they coast, their rear wheel makes noise. But the priority Apollos are very quiet.
And for folks that are interested in bike packing, they make a bike called the 600X, the Priority 600X, which is a full-on bike packing mountain bike bike. So anyway, so that's where the name Apollo came from. And it was, I don't know, it was a magical summer, man. It was 77 days, 3,489 miles. We averaged about 60 miles a day. And we saw, we saw stuff that you just can't see in a car. You're so immersed in the experience because you can hear it and smell it and feel it, and you're only going 10 miles an hour. And, there is no better way to see the country than on a bicycle, in my opinion, and so we really saw some amazing stuff.
Typically the smells are quite pleasant, but when you see that dead deer alongside the road, that doesn't smell very good.
Turns out dead deer stink.
Really stinks bad.
Surprise.
Yeah. It was, I just feel, happy that we were able to do it. And, a lot of like I said, a lot of planning went into it, but I thought the thing that would probably, barring an accident, the thing I thought would be a medical problem, like we blow out a knee or, something like that. We're not spring chickens, but, we didn't really train as hard as we probably should have, honestly. So I adjusted the route to where the first beginning days were pretty easy. So we sort of trained on the road, but yeah, we got her done. It was.
But day 5 or 6 was our largest climb day of the whole trip. We did 5,000 feet that day, unplanned. We planned to stop at one point, and it was at the bottom of a ravine. And I was suffering from anxiety over climbing at that point. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep tonight knowing I have to climb up out of here. Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
So that's why we did 5,000 feet that day. It was the right decision, though.
But yeah, mentioning like health issues and like people's ability to do this. You guys aren't like secret collegiate athletes or something like that previously, right?
No. In fact, one thing I learned about myself on this trip is I'm a lazy cyclist.
Yeah, I already knew that.
I am a lazy cyclist.
Yeah,
but I completed the ride. I got across the country.
I've got bad knees. I wear knee braces when I cycle, and I was actually having some rotator cuff issues and some tennis elbow right before the ride. And, I thought, oh my God, this stuff's going to be a problem, but, it was fine. Cycling's a pretty low stress activity. It's not like running or, and if you have the right bike with the right gearing, even climbing hills, you just gear down and go slow. It's just high cadence, low stress, riding. And that's the kind of riding we do. We're not high, we're very high cadence riders to keep the stress on the knees and stuff down, but we're not fast. Our average speed was 10 miles an hour, but it's not a race, but I don't think you have to be, an Olympic level athlete to do this stuff, and you really do get fit on the bike. It's the training really is about your butt. The butt is the thing that I think probably prevents more people from doing long distance cycling than anything. Because we talk to people like, oh yeah, I rode my bike like 3 days in a row and my butt hurts so bad I just can't do it anymore. And you just gotta suck it up and get through that phase where your butt hurts, because it stops. After a while, it just doesn't hurt anymore. But yeah.
If any of your listeners do watch BBB Adventures, they'll have learned already that I did suffer from some high blood pressure issues. By the time we got to Jackson, I was not feeling very well and went to urgent care and found out my blood pressure was way high. We thought it was from the salt tablets I was eating, so I stopped taking them. But when I had it rechecked when we got to Iowa, and it was still high, even though I had stopped taking the salt tablets. So I actually got diagnosed with high blood pressure while riding my bicycle across the United States. Imagine that.
She was taking the salt tablets for muscle cramps.
Yeah.
But
and it worked for that. I was not having cramps.
Yeah, but that's but she's fine now.
Yeah, it's controlled through medication. It's fine, and we're still trying to determine the underlying cause, but I think it's just genetics.
The other thing for people our age, that everyone our age I'm sure has discovered, is the magic of ibuprofen. I mean, I was eating the stuff like candy to keep my knees. And I actually talked to my doctor about it before I went. I'm like, I'm going to be doing this right, and I'm going to be eating this stuff at several times a day. And I was taking 3 or 4 of them at a time. And
3, never 4.
He said, for this this time period, it's fine. You don't want to do that every day, but it really did keep the inflammation in my knees down, and we got it done. We rode it.
Yeah, in long distance hiking circles, they call it vitamin I.
Yeah, I call it knee candy.
No, but that's good. So glad you all made it.
Yeah.
All in one piece. Because, one thing that kind of pops up in my mind, and during our cycling episode with our buddy Stan, I kind of vocalized my anxiety with vehicles and stuff, like big trucks and stuff, and people on their cell phone not paying attention while driving. Did you have any close calls of that type of nature?
I'll let Marybeth tell the story about the closest call we had, but I would start by saying, by and large, the drivers were super polite to us. Now we were wearing very bright colors. I have bike radar. I have a Garmin bike radar, which blinks at a different rate as a car approaches. It blinks faster. So we did everything possible to make ourselves visible, and actually got lots of comments from, like, we would pull into a gas station or something, and a driver would go, "Oh, I saw you guys back there on the road," and you're so easy to see. So visibility is key. You got to make yourselves like super visible. And but
Construction Orange was a great call. We had actually purchased cream-colored sun shirts, and I saw these orange shirts at Sam's Club, and I hemmed and hawed and probably thought about it for 2 weeks. And I'm like, we have to have those, and we bought them, and it was the best decision we had made. It was great. So the most inconsiderate drivers on the road we discovered were cattle truck drivers and the log truck drivers. They didn't seem to care that we were there.
They didn't make any attempt to give us any space.
Yeah, they just stayed in their lane. Everyone else, all the other drivers, gave us 3 feet or more. And they would actually hold back. If it was in a no passing zone, the drivers would stay behind us until it was safe to pass us.
Even semi trucks, if they weren't a logging truck or a cattle truck, we had in the some of the roads in central Idaho in the mountains where it's a double yellow line, it's going around a curve. We had semi truck drivers wait until they were around the corner and it was clear to pass us. So I was shocked actually at how polite the drivers were.
In every state.
In every state.
Yeah.
It was not a state by state things. We did talk to people that went through some states. I'm not going to name states like Kentucky or West Virginia. States like that. I won't name them. But they said, it was pretty bad. People were throwing water bottles at them. And I spent a lot of time in Texas, and I didn't have a lot of good luck in Texas with some of the drivers. But in the states we went through, I was super happy about the courtesy of the drivers, because it is dangerous. But I think visibility, and then, like the bike radar, you got to do things. Marybeth wears a little mirror on her, rearview mirror. You just got to be super aware. You can't let your guard down ever, But tell about the cattle truck.
Wait, before we get to the cattle truck, the other point is when we were driving on 2-lane highways, and they were often curvy, with cliffs on one side, river on the other. And in those situations, I got the feeling that the drivers were not distracted, because they couldn't be. You can't be driving on those roads and be texting with your cell phone. You can't be distracted. So we were actually, I think, protected or safer on those roads than we would be on a straight highway, interstate, where you do have a lot of distracted drivers, because they don't have to pay as close attention to what they're doing, because it's just, the same road they drive on every day and that sort of thing. These were holiday travelers and on a road that really demanded their attention, not just because we were there, but because the road was dangerous for them. So the cattle truck, we were traveling in Oregon. What part of Oregon were we?
We were in the Blue Mountains of Oregon. We were coming. We had summited the Blue Mountains, and we were coming down a pass. And the road, it was just a 2-lane road in the forest. It was beautiful. Cruising down the road, and a cattle truck goes past me, and he gets about 50 feet in front of me, and the cows inside, one of the cows inside, let loose, like had diarrhea out the side of the truck. It was a river of poo. Blasted the shoulder in front of me and the guardrail in front of me. And I'm just like, oh my God. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, oh my God. And I was stopping fast so I don't slide into it. Yeah. Brently's right behind me, and we're going down the hill. So we're going about 20 miles per hour, and he's having a hard time stopping. And he's like, you can't stop like that, And I'm like, I have to. Did you see that? So he thought he would pull out around me to avoid hitting me. But before he made that move, another cattle truck comes barreling past. So thank God he didn't pull out to go around me. And we were able to come to a stop before we got into the mess that the cow had left on the road. But that was the closest call we had to a disaster. And I had absolutely no idea that would happen. I just, if it had happened right next to me, it would have been bad, because it would have been bad. So all of your listeners know that cattle trucks can do this. And I felt like after that happened, I felt like now that I know that can happen, I think I can handle it.
So there's a whole other facet of this trip that I think we'd be remiss to not talk about. But so tell us about the Boise Bicycle Project and how that kind of goes along with your trip.
We wanted the trip to have a little bit deeper meaning for us. And not that it wasn't going to have meaning, but we really wanted it to have more significance. And so we thought, well, we'll find an organization to support. We'll try to raise money. We'll turn this into a bit of a fundraiser. So that began a search. And we thought about organizations like People for Bikes, which is a great organization if you're not familiar with it. We thought about other stuff. And then it's like, we really want to do something that's more local. So we started looking around locally, and in that search, we found the Boise Bicycle Project. Now, we don't live in Boise, we live in Idaho Falls, but it's still local enough that it's an Idaho organization. Idaho Falls isn't really big enough to have something like that. And so we basically found them doing a Google search. I had never heard of it before, but once we contacted them, and started to understand what they do, it became clear that that was the right organization to support. And so we started a fundraising campaign, and our goal is to raise $1 for every mile that we rode. So that, and I think we're at about $2,100. Our goal is $3,400. And so we're going to continue to leave that campaign open as we publish all of the episodes of the Apollo mission. I think we'll make the goal. I really do. We're getting a lot of great support. But the Boise Bicycle Project is a nonprofit organization that basically takes donated bikes. So people donate bikes to them, and they either fix them up. They do it like a triage. They sort of assess the condition of the bike, and they either fix it up or they take it apart and salvage the usable components. But the bikes that they fix up, they have a retail store in Boise, and you can go in and buy a bike that's been fixed up, and that helps fund their efforts. But they also give away a lot of bikes to people in need. So their philosophy is that everybody should have a bike, and that's not just kids. They've given away 12,000. I think it's 12,000 bicycles in the 15 years they've been around, and a lot of those are to kids, but a lot of them are also to folks who don't have any other. They're in a position where they don't have transportation. They need transportation to get to a job or something like that. So if somebody comes in with a need for a bicycle, they leave the Boise Bicycle Project with a bicycle. And so they're really helping push, good things for the Boise community. And everybody deserves a bike, and we're going to help everybody get a bike, sort of philosophy. We did a great episode on BBB Adventures because we went through Boise as part of the Apollo mission, and we stopped there and met Jimmy, who's one of the co-founders, and we interviewed him, and it's a great episode if you haven't seen it. That really lets you know what that organization is about. But it deserves support. It's doing some, and it's not just bicycles. Jimmy's part of he's on the Boise City Council. He's pushing bicycle-friendly things into the Boise area, advocating even at the statewide level and maybe even beyond about cycling advocacy, and the children that get a bike get a helmet, they get safety gear, they get training, they get a lock, they get they're about education. It's just a really, really great organization.
So they have a repair shop too, and they have parts and bits and pieces where you can go in and do repair for your bike, and you can reserve shop time. You don't get to reserve a mechanic. You don't take your bike there and have someone service it. You take your bike there and they show you how to repair your bike yourself.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It is really cool.
If for those people in the Boise area, if you haven't stopped by, you should go check them out. It's really an inspiring group of people.
Yeah, they have a membership based program as well. You can be a member.
You can pay a fee and become a member of the Boise Bicycle Project. And members get once a year they get to pick a frame, and they have free access to the components. And so every year you can build yourself a bike down there.
I think but the components that they sell there are at a very reduced price. Like
the rack that I put on the Apollos, I bought retail. They were like $55. That exact rack was in their parts bin.
For $7.
The exact thing for $7.50. So
wow.
They've got high quality components down there that they're pulling off these bikes. You'd be surprised some of the bikes that people donate. I mean, you can imagine somebody buys a pretty high end road bike, rides it twice, decides his butt hurts. It sits in the garage for 3 years, and they want to clean out the garage. They're like, I'll just go donate this, take the tax deduction, and so it's not just crappy, rusty bikes. They're getting some nice bikes down there. If any of your viewers want to donate, they can go to any of our Apollo mission videos on YouTube. Go to the description section, and there's a link in the description that you can use to get to our campaign page.
And I'll put it in the show notes too, so
Okay.
It'll be available there as well. I think it's time for the question. What's your biggest outdoor mistake?
I thought my biggest outdoor mistake was going to be not doing the right research into what a 2-man tent really means. Because we ordered a brand new tent. We ordered a bike packing tent, and I just ordered a 2-person tent. And so when it came, we set it up in our basement, and literally I went back and looked at the order form, and they sent me a 1-man tent. I don't understand why did they send me a 1-man tent. But we ended up using it, and so I really did think it was going to be a mistake. But
we ended up loving it. We're not just using it; we loved it. It was perfect for us.
Yeah, it was. But there was no space. I don't know if I'd recommend it. We made good use of it, and we got used to it. I don't know if I'd recommend it though, because there was no place for our gear, so we couldn't secure the gear, and I think a 3-man tent probably would have, a 3-person tent would have given us the place to put some of our gear, but Marybeth and I are, we're like newlyweds. We're very close. And so the 2-person tent, and what's funny is in the instructions of the tent, it showed a guy and a dog. And I'm like, oh, well, that's why they're calling it a 2-person tent, because it's this guy and his 4-pound dog, and there's probably enough room in it for that. But so anybody who buys a tent and is going to just buy it online and not go to like REI and look at it first, a 2-person tent isn't really that. It's really a 1-person tent. So
Kyle and I have shared my 2-person hiking tent. It's snug, but it's not terrible.
Oh, yeah.
We just had to put all our stuff in the vestibule, but it's doable. But if you want to stretch, somebody else has to get out of the tent.
Yeah, Marybeth, what do you have a biggest outdoor?
I know I shared that one with you.
Oh, you do?
That's fine.
Growing up in Idaho, like I said, doing all the outdoor activities, we made a lot of mistakes, but I don't really view them as mistakes. They were, I learned a lot from all of the stupid things that we did, getting lost in the backcountry of Yellowstone backpacking with my dad. And, that just turned out to be a good way to learn how to use a map and a compass. We've had a lot of experiences that all added to the knowledge. It's like, if you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing yourself. So I view a lot of the dumb things or bad things that happened as learning opportunities.
Yeah, and more often than not, they turn into good stories. In the end,
do.
Little self-deprecation is always good.
Oh,
I know. My buddy Alex, he loves telling all the dumb things I've done and have almost died a couple times. Anytime my wife's around to hear it, he loves telling them. But before we kind of wrap it up, I'm going to shamelessly steal this from another podcast that does not need my help promoting them, but. What is the question we should be asking you that we haven't thought about? I like these nice big open-ended questions.
Let's see. Well, you asked a lot of really good questions, and we didn't talk too much about our age, and is there anything about our age that impacts our ability to do the things outside we want to do? Because I'm 56, Marybeth's 58. We're not spring chickens. And I would say, if you were to ask me that question, it's like, you're in your mid to late 50s, what advice would you have for folks? It's don't let the age or even your physical condition prevent you from getting started. Like this guy we were talking about, Clarence and RAGBRAI. He did his first RAGBRAI at 87. Now I'm not suggesting people wait till they're 87 to start doing stuff, but get out and get started. And it's one day at a time. It's one event at a time. If it's 1 mile at a time, it's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So it's don't let these numbers prevent you from getting off the couch, getting away from whatever, and getting outside, because really the endorphins that are released when you do physical things outside and you're breathing fresh air will improve anybody's view of life. And I just would, that don't let age or physical condition, your current physical condition, prevent you from getting started.
Love it. I think that's a good thing to wrap it up on. So we'll go into all my housekeeping stuff. So Marybeth and Brently, plug yourselves. Where can people find you online and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so look, BBB Adventures on YouTube is our main sort of social media that you can sort of see what we're up to. We do have an Instagram. It's at Buses, Bikes, Beers. Our email is bussesbikesbeers@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to us, or you can message us on Instagram. If you want to see the world's best dog, then you can see Disco he has an Instagram, of course, at Disco Macaw. And
DISCOMACAW.
Yep, he's you can watch him bark at himself in a mirror. But I think that's it for social media.
All right.
But please,
cool.
And if you do like what you see on Buses Bike or on BBB Adventures, we love interacting with comments. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from anybody.
Subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe, and we'd love to hear from anyone.
Isn't there supposed to be like a sound of a little bell at that point? Like
Yeah,
and subscribe.
Like
Ding!
ding.
Maybe we'll have to edit that in.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great conversation, and
Thanks
really
for having
appreciate
us.
you taking the time.
Oh, it was our pleasure.
Thanks
Enjoyed
for having
it.
us.
Thank you so much.
All right, now more podcasty housekeeping stuff. We now officially have a logo, and I'd like to thank POD for getting us in contact with Leslie Hensley. He did a great job, and we really like what we've come up with. If you follow us on Instagram, you've seen it already because we've already posted about it. Very excited. And on top of that, we have our first official review. I've been saying it every episode that I would read a 5-star review, and we got a 5-star review. So I'm going to read it right now. It's entitled Learning to Adventure. This is from The Bad Tim on Apple. It's our friend Tim Codman. But he writes, great introduction to a broad range of adventuring around the world. Opens the door of more ways to experience what the earth has to offer. Also, appreciate that Kyle doesn't have social media. Keep at it, guys. So thanks, Tim. And if you want to be cool like Tim, write us a review and I'll read it on the podcast here. But other than that, my Instagram's the same, at Trevor Bowman. Kyle still doesn't have Instagram, so wave at people named Kyle that are in Boise, or just people that look like Kyle in general. If you want to get in contact with the podcast, you can email us at adventuringformeremortals@gmail.com. Our podcast Instagram is at meremortalpod, and we still have a Discord. It's kind of quiet over there, but the link to that will be in the show notes. And I guess thanks for coming on once again, and we'll see y'all next month.